Live and unscripted from the DC metro area, this is a story of surviving and thriving after a layoff. This outdoor podcast is brought to you by atopcareer.com. Episode 18. Edythe's strategic job search approach has resulted in a 100% response rate for positions that she's applied to. Now, it's time for her to prepare for her upcoming interviews. If you also have an upcoming interview, tune in for Edythe's tips on preparing.
Today I have some good news to report, which is a welcome relief after my last recording. And my good news is that I have 2 interviews scheduled and coming up. And even more exciting, that I am at a 100% response rate for positions I've applied to since I got notice of my layoff. And the reason for this, the first reason is pretty obvious, and that's that working in this field, I'm at an advantage because I understand how resumes work, how they're screened, and what people are paying attention to when they're reading resumes. The other reason is that I've only applied to 3 positions, but they were all positions that I'm very interested in, and I took the time to customize my resume for each one. And I used that resource that I've advocated before, which is jobscan.co. And that website helps you to get past the applicant tracking systems, the ATS systems. So this is really good news because that is a huge, huge hurdle. And any time that your resume gets through to this point, I think should be cause for celebration because there's so many people who are applying for each job advertised now. So this is my good news. And now my next step is to prepare for the interviews. So interviews, like resumes, are a very subjective process. But the more that you can research and the more you can practice ahead of time, the better off you're going to be. I'm going to venture to say that it would be really helpful to have some practice interviews before you interview for a position that really, really interests you. And it's just good practice. It's just good to get you into the swing of things and to start to understand types of questions that are going to be asked and how you can leverage your background to best position yourself in a favorable light. You also need to make sure that you have some stories to tell that provide examples of why you would be the best fit for this position. And that is why the research is so important. So any type of information that you can get that is related to challenges or problems that the organization is facing. And this position specifically that you want to interview for, what's going to be the role of the position and why would you be a better fit than the other 5 to 10 people who have been chosen to interview. And it might even be more than that. It's so competitive, and I know here in the Washington, D.C. metro area, this is one of the most competitive job markets anywhere. And there's just so many qualified people, very highly qualified, very well-educated people in the area. You might be living in a less competitive area, but still prepare for the worst is what I say here. If you are not able to go on some practice interviews for jobs that, you're not really that keen on, at least try to practice with another person who is able to give you some really honest feedback. And then listen with an open mind to what they have to say and take it to heart and try to implement their suggestions. Sometimes with interviews, you can just do everything right. You can prepare really well. You can have all the credentials that they're asking for, and you don't get chosen. If that happens, these are most likely going to be things that are beyond your control. And at least if you did everything that you can to prepare, to research, to practice ahead of time, you'll know that you can honestly say at that point that you did your best. So those are my takeaways for today. Number 1 is to be strategic about the positions that you're applying for, especially if they are positions online. Make sure that you customize your resume every time, sending out fewer resumes, but tailoring them accordingly and taking the time to articulate your accomplishments and why you're a good fit for the position is going to be time well spent. And I guarantee you, if you do this, you'll be amazed at the response rate that you get. And second is to begin preparing for the interview, which is what I'm going to be doing over the next couple days.
Find Edythe online at www.atopcareer.com. Thanks for listening.